Hey, it's David Guetta on the station that plays all the hits.
One station, all the hits. Winnipeg's new #1 hit music station.
Hey, this is Lady Gaga.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is Usher, and you're checking out the hottest radio station.
It's the all-new Energy 106.
So last week I watched a rant from Rick Mercer, which really kind of hit home for me in a lot of ways. This rant is picking up steam on the internet, almost 500,000 views alone, and it was about teen suicide, bullying, and how gay youth need more gay role models. So to talk more about the rant and maybe kind of what it meant to him, I'm on the phone right now with Canada's top political comedian, best-selling author, and host of the Rick Mercer Report. Rick Mercer, how you doing?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Happy to.
Now, Rick, you did this rant. It's pretty big out there. It's hitting all the streams. How have you found the reaction to that rant so far?
Well, you can never tell when you do something on television what's going to go viral. You know, I have learned that if you involve, I guess, baby animals, that can go viral. We've had some things go viral over the years. If I could pick anyone that I wanted to go viral, and you don't get to pick these things, I certainly probably would have picked this rant. This rant was a little different than most rants. I generally try to be amusing anyway in a rant, and sometimes I fail, but this was a very serious subject, of course. It's teenage bullying, and also it was inspired by the death of 15-year-old boy Jamie Hubley, who took his own life after being bullied for being gay. And so it's not a funny subject, but it was a subject that I felt fairly passionate about and wanted to rant about. And the response has been pretty overwhelming, actually. I mean, on one level, it was kind of considered controversial, and whether, which is fine. I mean, if people disagree with me, well, that's fine. I've been disagreeing with people forever, professionally. I guess personally, the responses that I've gotten, it's been amazing to me, even in my own work environment. Suddenly someone starts talking about how all the difficulty they're having with their kid who's being bullied at school, and we didn't know that, and that's right there in my own work environment. And then so many emails from mothers who are just terrified every day their kids go out the door and off to school because they're having a hard time, they're being bullied for whatever reason, and they feel like they've exhausted all the avenues open to them. And then emails from people who somehow got through bullying and want to talk about it and tell their story, and then emails from kids who are at risk and being bullied or having a very hard time.
Now, Rick, I do watch your rants, and I'm also on your subscription list, so I listen to them on a weekly basis, and I see where you're talking about where you try to make them kind of funny, but you could really hear the passion and you could see the emotion come through on this rant. What did it mean to you to be able to do this?
I responded, I think, the way probably any adult in Canada responded when they heard about Jamie Hubley taking his own life. I mean, that's a tragedy, and we all basically respond the same way. It's just a terrible, terrible story, and tragically one that was probably preventable. As a gay man, I guess I felt a bit more personally affected, perhaps. Although I think I just responded just as a human being, I think what's interesting about Jamie Hubley is I Googled him. He had a YouTube page, and there was all these videos of him like singing and dancing and doing stuff that, kids do on YouTube. And that suddenly was a new experience for me because, you read about someone in the paper losing their life, and you go, that's a tragedy. But then the next thing you know, you're watching their videos on YouTube, and they just seem so full of life and, with just the vast amount of potential and talent. And I guess that was another reason why it struck me so hard. And I guess it brought home to me again that, how vulnerable these gay kids are. And you know what? I've been talking to some of my friends about, and it's funny, like I'm 42, and obviously I was gay my entire life, and I knew I was, but I certainly wasn't out in high school. And but I just did, like, no one was out in high school. It wasn't even an option. And so it's because there were no gay kids in high school. I don't think about gay kids in high school. You know what I mean? I read about them and I go, really? The kid is out of the closet in high school? What's that about? And then you mention that to a friend of mine's kid, and they're like, oh, yeah, there's like 7 in my school. And so they are coming out earlier, and they need, they obviously need support. I mean, some of them I'm sure are doing great, but a lot of them are very vulnerable.
I do want to talk to you about your experience in school in just a second here, but do you consider yourself a role model to gay youth, Rick?
No. Well, you know what? I hate to use the word role model because that's not actually what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just being visible, quite frankly. I think just being, this is all very strange. Anyway, I'm a very private person, actually, even though I live a pretty public life. I mean, the idea that I'm on radio talking about any of this stuff is a bit appalling, actually. I'm not the kind of guy who's ever done like a column in a paper, what kind of car I drive, or where I go on vacation, or this is my back deck and how I barbecue. Like, just the idea of that is just horrible.
Life in the rich and famous, it's just not for you?
Well, it's just, I just generally,
I could do that accent for you if you want.
Some sort of privacy. But it's not so much a role model as just being visible. Gay kids can go like, oh, you know what? That guy who plays hockey, he's gay. They don't, you don't have to stand up as a role model, but certainly it doesn't hurt for them to see people who, have successful careers or, successful families and, pay taxes, play by the rules, have people they love and have people who love them, and they just go about their business.
Now, Rick, in your rant, you did mention police officers, political people. When you throw the challenge out there, what has been the reaction like to some of these people that you do know that maybe are gay and are not visible?
Certainly. I know everyone on that list. Soldiers, I know them all. I think again, there's nothing personal about it, and I understand, coming out or being out, especially publicly, like if you have a public life, like you are a professional athlete, or you're the chief of police, or or you're a commander in Afghanistan. I mean, if you have somewhat of a public life, there's lots of reasons why people don't come out, but I think it doesn't hurt for all of us who are in my situation, say, to occasionally sit back and go, well, maybe I could be a bit more visible, and maybe the consequences aren't that great, and maybe, it might make me somewhat uncomfortable, but perhaps it's for the greater good. That's all. It's like we all get in velvet rut, and you're just going along and everything is fine, and you could be the chief of police somewhere, and you could be gay, and then you realize, well, you know what, maybe if I let that be known, then it might help someone else.
Now, let's talk about your experience in school a little bit more. You mentioned a few moments ago that you always knew that you were gay, but you never really either accepted it or came to terms with it while you were in school?
I'm probably a bad example. And again, I don't know, I have to be careful, like, giving advice to young gay people because,
But we're dealing with different generations. Like, I'm not far from your generation, Rick, so I kind of understand what perhaps you were going through as well.
Like, I dealt with it by not dealing with it. And I don't think there was any great consequence. And I always knew that it would work out somehow. And I never had the concerns that my family were going to disown me or any of that business. I mean, I didn't want to disappoint them, obviously, all that regular stuff, but I didn't have those concerns. And I was interested in the theater, and I figured, well, if you're going to work it anywhere, it might as well be the theater. We didn't have gay straight alliances. We had the drama club. It was basically the same thing. But I just didn't really worry about it, and high school was not a bad time for me. I was on student council, and I was mostly interested in getting up and, doing funny speeches and all that business. It wasn't something that I was dealing with at that point. I guess I thought, well, this is something I'll deal with when I'm out of high school, quite frankly. I'm not saying that that's the way kids should deal with it today. I know people who were out in high school, and I've spoken at gay straight alliances and such, and it's just pretty overwhelming for someone of my generation. I wasn't going to speak they asked me to speak at gay straight alliance, and I was thinking, sure, what do I know about talking to kids about being gay at school? I wasn't. You might as well ask me to go give a lecture at a math class. I don't know.